Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello, my name is Dachlan Cartwright. I'm an English teacher and I've lived in Indonesia for several years. And I thought of compiling a series of vlogs helping Indonesian learners of English. So with aspects of English that Indonesian speakers find especially problematic. And we'll see how it goes. It's the first time I've done a vlog. I'm not tech savvy, and I would like to also acknowledge the help of my son Munadi, my daughter Rianti, and my son-in-law Kaz, who are helping me out on the technical side. So we plan at first a series of 8 vlogs, and now I'll run through the outline. They're called Doc Vlog, and there are 8, as I said. So I'm just going to run through the outline now. Each vlog will be divided into a language segment and a thematic segment. The language segment is obvious. We'll focus on language areas of particular interest and possibly problematic to Indonesian learners. For the thematic segments, we'll share some aspects of British culture, which I think is important for our two great nations. And I can explain some of the aspects, the difficulties, the misunderstandings, the complications of British culture to you, and hopefully in a small way help forge a stronger link between our two great nations. I love Indonesia. My wife is Indonesian. My children were born here. And yeah, I love Britain too, of course. So both great countries. Now, so here is the outline of the 8 vlogs. Now, the first one, I've given names to each one, and the first one will be called Simply Present in Indonesia. The language segment will focus on phonetics and on the present simple tense. The thematic segment will focus on something of myself, something autobiographical, so you can see where I'm coming from. So that's DC Vlog, Doc Vlog, 1. Doc Vlog 2, that's called Past Islands. The language segment is about, we're focusing on the past tense, a simple past tense in English. And the thematic section is tells of how I first came to Indonesia in 1971, and I'll read some stanzas from a poem I wrote about that. Right, Doc Vlog 3. That's called Rock and Roll is Rolling Hole. Rock and Roll is Rolling Roll. The language segment will include something called false friends. Oh dear, do we have any false friends? Yes, in English, we do have some false friends, and we must identify them, yeah? And try and make the falseness true. Okay, and then we'll also move on to continuous tenses, continuous. I love rock and roll music, and I know, as I said, Indonesians do love music, and probably there are not many of you out there as old as me, but I do know that in Indonesia you loved some of the early rockers like Elvis and Connie Francis, and you also had Indo-rock, this amazing, if you like, a subtext of early rock and roll, and there's a whole, that's a whole area to be studied. So we'll talk about rock and roll and why I like it, and who are my favorite singers, and also my friends with, I'm friends with G-Plug, the great Beatles tribute band. Doc Vlog 4, The Perfect Game. Now, in there the clue is we're going to study perfect tense, present perfect, past perfect, yeah? And what do you think is the perfect game? I think it's also known as the beautiful game all over the world, except in the United States, but we'll forget that for a minute. And it's going to be about football. I'm not going to say soccer, I'm going to say football, sepak bola, because that's what we call it. That's what most countries in the world call it. And I love football, and I have some favorite teams, and I'm sure you do too. So I'll share something of the history of my favorite teams and the development of the game, the history of the game in Britain. Dog Flog 5, Liverpool's future. Now, you'll see the clue to the tenses, or future tenses. Future tenses, there are several ways of expressing the future time in English, and we'll be looking at those tenses, and also focusing on my hometown, Liverpool, which I love, which has a very interesting history. We say a checkered history, up and down. Right at the moment, it's on a boom. It's really developing. Everyone says what a great city it is, a friendly city. You see all these YouTube videos. I'm really proud of that city. It is a very special place. Right. Dog Flog 6. The Cymry are no longer passive. We're going to focus on the passive voice, what is called a passive voice in English. Up to now, we've been talking about the active voice. We'll explain that when we come to it. The thematic section will be about Cymru. You know, what is Cymru? Where on earth is Cymru? Well, Cymru is Wales, and it's actually the correct name for that country. And my mother's Welsh, or Cymraeg, I should say Cymric, and I was brought up there, and it has its own unique culture, and so we'll be talking about the history and the language and the present situation in Cymru. So don't say Wales, say Cymru. Right. Dog Flog 7, Bicultural Imperatives. So obviously I think you can, from that title, you can get the language point. Yes, imperatives, yeah, imperatives, commands, orders. Again, a very important aspect or section of the English language. Do this, do that. And for the thematic section, I'd like to share some bicultural aspects. Bicultural, people used to talk about cross-cultural, where we would discuss the different habits, customs across various cultures. Now, we'll just focus on two, obviously Indonesia and Britain. And I've isolated three aspects where we tend to we clash a little bit, we're different, yeah? And of course, with the aim of mutual understanding, not actually, I don't want all the Indonesians to start being British, and you don't want the British to start, we don't want the British to start being Indonesian, but at least making some bridges to bridge the gaps. Finally, Dog Flog 8. I'm in the mood for Conrad. I'm in the mode for Conrad. Modal verbs, shall, may, might, would, are again problematic in English, often cause confusion, so we'll be looking at modal verbs. And I want to talk about Joseph Conrad. I love literature, poetry, and Joseph Conrad was one of the greatest ever English novelists. And English was his third language. He didn't actually learn English until his early 20s. And he went on to become one of the very greatest novelists in English. And so there's hope for all English students. You know, he's such a great example. But his novels are very powerful, and many of them are set here in Indonesia. So I just want to share our knowledge of Conrad and where he wrote about, so that there'll be, again, he wrote about Kalimantan and the Sunda Strait, and just his impression of he loved the East and was a sort of romantic about the East, but there's a pessimism, a realism in him. So a really great man, and of course a great novelist. So those are our eight dog vlogs, and that was an outline of the language segments and the thematic segments. Thank you.